Hi everybody, this is Kish again. It's been a while since I recorded a video, we've just been watching the events, and it's just so depressing. What can I say? So finally, I'm here with a video towards the end of the year. The video is titled "Return to Democrats' Policies and Socialism Everywhere." Right, so as we know, Joe Biden took over as president on 20th January, and since then it's been one disaster after another. Just can't believe this, and nothing, of course, that we did not see or I did not predict or didn't talk about earlier as well. So let's go over review how his policies have been since about it's almost going to be close to a year since he has been president, and what are the changes both externally in terms of external policy, foreign policy, as well as domestically in the United States, as well as let's also at the end discuss about, say for example, Modi in India, and the repeal of the farm laws, which is the latest things, that surprising move that has come about, and other just survey things, how are things in Europe, a COVID situation, and kind of let's touch about all these different things, aspects that are going on in the world as well, starting with US domestic policy. Right, so Biden kind of became president, one of the main reasons, though I feel it was the validity of the election is, I still feel it's in question, though of course all the courts, everybody has said authenticated it and whatnot. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything is great. Like for example, the cyclist Armstrong, I forget his first name, had won Tour de France, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times, and every time there was an accusation about him doing doping, it was all cleared by everyone, saying, hey, there's nothing, we found nothing, everything's great. Only years or probably even decades later were they able to finally establish that this guy was really doping, and then they have removed all his medals out. So I would still say the jury is out in terms of the election verdict. But in any case, Biden has been the president, and let's analyze what sort of policies have we adopted and what are we seeing as the consequences of this. So, well, no surprise, start with where? Let's say immigration. So all the borders are open like crazy right now. Caravans after caravans are coming in. There is nobody stopping nothing. It's total chaos. And it's nothing unexpected. That's what is Democrats' policy. They're going to open it up to everybody. So majority who are the immigrants coming in were Mexicans and Latin Americans speaking Spanish, who they are running from socialism that's over there in their country. They are number one. And another large chunk of community that I see coming in are the Muslims and Middle Easterners who are coming out of the Middle East, who are running from wars, poverty, all kinds of such stuff. There are some other Asians or Africans or maybe some Europeans, Eastern Europeans, who not. Those may also be trying to come, but those numbers are not minuscule compared to these two majority groups. So eventually, United States is going to be overrun, become a Hispanic country that everybody is already is clear in another 20 to 30 years, with majority Hispanic people. And then there will be pockets in America that's going to become Islamic State of America. Right? States of America, places like probably Virginia, which seems to attract a lot of these folks. Maybe Chicago, many of these liberal states are going to also end up as Islamic states of United States. Right? So wherein there's going to be a huge Muslim population and all kinds of troubles that come along with it. Like for example, if you want to see how it's going to be like, just look at Europe, right? Like France, all the all the liberal countries in Europe, what policy they adopted and where they are right now. And talking about just the birth rates, so white people bear I don't know, they hardly have one kid, or I don't know, the number is like really low in terms of the child birth rate, whether it is Latinos or whether it is Middle Easterners, they just keep breeding like pigs. Right? Kid after kid, there's no end. And I guess in the religion of both Christianity and Islam, contraception or any such thing is probably not helped or not encouraged either. So you're everything is Allah ki den hai, have as many babies, it's all the gift from God. Right, so that's kind of thing. And despite of their economic status, I don't know, they're not worried about how I'm going to feed the baby or anything. They just keep making ones, whereas the rest of the population does not have that level of birth rate. So within a generation or two, this country is going to be overrun by all these people. And Biden wants to give if he can, if he's allowed, free citizenship to everybody and anybody who came in from however, especially the undocumented illegal immigrants from South America, Mexico. So not sure where that's going to take this country, but it's not a surprise. That is Democrats' policy, and their objective is, or their idea is, that all these guys are going to become Democratic voters eventually, I guess. Right, so that's their policy, and we are seeing that happening in full swing right now as far as immigration is concerned. And there was all criticism about kids in cages and whatnot when Trump was president. I think there are more kids in cages now, and things are even worse than what anything was under Trump. Right, that's one. And then the other big one that Biden promised in terms when he became president was to fight COVID. Right, he said, Trump wasn't doing the right thing, and 400,000 whatever number have people have died, and blah blah blah. I'm going to come here and I'm going to shut down the virus. I'm going to vaccinate like crazy and everything. So, but what have we been seeing? In the year 2021, there have been more deaths in US because of the virus than there were in the year 2020. Right, so we have had, despite the vaccination and whatnot, we have had major waves throughout the summer of COVID. Now they will try to blame conservatives who didn't get vaccinated, because these states were primarily in the south, run by Republicans. But when Trump was president, the states with the maximum cases were more like New York and California and all the liberal states, and that's where the deaths were more. At that time, the same liberals did not blame the governor of these states like Cuomo and Newsom. They were in fact the heroes of liberals. Like, oh, these guys are doing such a wonderful job, though, thousands and thousands were dying, and Trump was the one to blame. So now they're not blaming the president suddenly because the president is liberal. They want to turn around and blame the governors. And these were the same states where, despite having no vaccine, Trump had kept the COVID rate low. So Biden has done a totally pathetic job in terms of managing COVID, and you can see it in his approval ratings and everything. Right, and coming to inflation, coming to livelihoods of people. Right, yes, Biden has spent like crazy, and the deficit is simply through the roof. I guess there is no point or meaning to trillions anymore. Every single day there will be some multi-trillion bill being discussed and getting ready to be passed. Right, so that wasn't anything unexpected either. So all this has resulted in the kind of inflation that we have not seen in decades in America. Right, under Trump, if you remember, the price of everything was so cheap. Of course, though the economy was booming, yes, you can say pandemic caused it, but even before the pandemic, gas prices, though economy was like booming, we had 3% plus, though it's not really boom if you ask me, because it's all spending borrowed money that's causing this. But that aside, that all the presidents, Obama, Bush, everybody's doing the same policy, or so was Trump, and now Biden too, with on steroids, in fact. Borrow, spend, print, whatever you can, just spend. Right, so anyway, the inflation rate was so low and things were affordable. Of course, yes, we were in a huge stock market bubble, which has gotten even more crazier now. I don't disagree on that. But at least, livelihood was not so pathetic under the Trump presidency, and prices were not through the roof like they are right now. So Biden barely came in, and most of the US production is gone. US had become the biggest oil producer, under Trump. I don't think they are anymore. And now we have again handed the monopoly to the Middle Eastern cartel, who are going to decide the oil price and who are going to decide how much oil should be supplied and everything. So, and we are at their mercy now. And oil prices are over, at least where I live in Texas, it's over $3 a gallon at the pump. And it used to be, I remember, 150 or under $2 most of Trump presidency, and even part of Obama's for that matter, right? When the oil prices had crashed and they were like $30 a barrel for quite a while. So whether it's oil, whether it's food, whether it's anything, look at the rents, home prices, everything is going crazy. And there is no end in sight, and these guys are going to print and spend even more and more, and borrow, spend, borrow whatever they can, tax, so any possible way they can get money, and they be able to spend it on freebies and all kinds of free stuff for votes. That's what Democrats are going to do, and that's their policy, and that's we are seeing that in in spades and on steroids. And I guess if there is another COVID wave, looking at what it looks like in Europe, and we have to do more shutdowns or something, how much is the spending going to be like in another 3 months or 6 months? And next November is the next election in America. So Democrats may lose control of one of the houses, maybe the Senate, where they have a bare, small, thin majority. So whatever spending they need to do, they're obviously going to have to ram through in the next 1 year and get as much passed as possible, so that what is going to be next year going to look like in terms of spending. Probably every week, or if not every month, will there be a spending bill going out with all trillions attached to it, so it's just insane. That's the way of insanity we have reached, and unfortunately it's only going to keep getting worse as more and more immigrants are keep entering into America. And the democratic policies in one state, like for example California, keeps making more liberals and more people move out of that state and go to states like Texas. All these states are, and these guys who are moving don't realize what is causing these policies, these outcomes in California that is forcing them to move. They don't understand that it is Democrats' policy. So they're going to come to a new state and start voting Democrat again. So I fear that in 4 to 8 years, Trump is the last chance in 2024 if he runs. Beyond that, it is very, very unlikely that the current Republican Party can ever get re-elected again in the current form, unless they start becoming Democrats themselves too, and adopting these kind of same socialism type policies of freebies and whatnot, and open borders and all kinds of such stuff. Without that, I don't see how a Republican Party is going to survive in a few years, and how they can even turn around and win any election when there are so many more immigrants who are going to come in and become citizens, and who all invariably will be voting Democrat. And probably, the Democrats will devise a strategy of moving a bunch of these people into the red states as well, so they can start flipping these reds, like how kind of it happened in the in the recent election as well, and how Biden won, because he flipped quite a few of these states, right? Which I don't know. We'll see what the reality of those will come out as in the future, right? But that's what was the final result that we were told by the media, and that's how Biden became president. So anyway, so the disaster is unmitigated, right? And the polls of Biden polls numbers are already showing that. And the less we talk about Kamala, the better. She is, I don't know, is even disaster squared, or I don't know what we can say. And she has a very good chance of becoming president, who knows, in Biden term, or even after the term in 2024, or luckily, hopefully not. Trump should be defeating her hands down, like how he did Hillary. I expect something to happen even before 2024, but at least in the worst case that nothing else happens and we get to the actual general election. So is that going to happen, or is Biden going to run again? So all remains to be seen. And so this is where we are with domestic policy. I don't think anything changing. And then the craziness of liberalism with all these LGBTQ pronoun and whatnot, that's just going to go through the roofs now. Right? And that is nothing, another thing that is not anything unexpected. I'm not saying people should not be given their rights and whatnot. Obviously we're all for equality and the correct treatment and equal rights and all that stuff. But the way these liberals do this, they just take it to a whole new level and create a whole mess out of this whole situation. Similarly with climate change, so that's going to be another crazy thing that these guys are going to go after. And you'll see all kinds of rules, regulation and whatnot, taxes, everything that's going to come out in terms of this, trying to tackle this climate change that they believe is going to end the world, right, very soon. So that is as far as domestic policies are concerned. And obviously, and the denial of gain of function, as the cause or the possible one of the, I wouldn't say, we cannot say for sure that is the real root cause or anything as yet. But this is something that is definitely a nefarious activity that the Democrats and their researchers have been involved in, Mr. Fauci included, right? So the cover up of that continues unabated, and and all their media outlets and everyone has blacked out all this coverage of that as far as possible. And even if they try to cover it, they want to show the other side as the bad guys. That's all they have that they can say about this stuff, right? And all the other corruption and every kind of thing, like currying favors, using their power, misusing their power, all that stuff that's kind of part and parcel of being Democrats continues. I'm not saying Republicans don't do that either. I guess all parties are the same in these kind of activities. So I'm sure, but this is like the way these folks do it is like totally blatant, right? And they are like, and it's almost like nobody can stop them, and it keeps going on. So that same kind of stuff continues, and we are back to the old Washington ways. We had a break and a relief for a few years. Now that is totally gone, and it's all back to square one and back to the usual ways as far as domestic policy and the typical Democrats' policies are concerned. So, and it's unfortunately it's only going to get worse from here, as I see. With no end in sight, and and we are probably, the entire US is eventually going to look like a California, right? That's where we are starting to head now. So same kind of policies implemented across the board, and with Kamala, if she comes in and becomes the president, then it's almost like we might be racing there rather than just walking to the California. We might all be racing to California across the United States. Right, so that's where we are, unless something changes and Trump can put a break on this somehow. This is the future of United States as far as the domestic stuff is concerned. So let's now also get into the foreign policy and talk about the huge disasters that are going on since Biden has taken over, how the world has gone from positive to total negative, and warmongering, all kinds of stuff that is happening, preparation for World War III, maybe even if you call it, right? So that seems to be very evident. World splitting into groups. So we'll get into all those details in the next few minutes of this conversation. So hi everybody, happy new year to you as well. That year 2022 is here. We've just crossed over. Like expected, or you can say a little bit like unlike expected. So because even a couple of months ago there were articles in the media, experts coming out and saying that by the end of January, America is going to be out of the pandemic will be over in the US. So all such kinds of predictions were out there. But suddenly now the Omicron variant is out, and it has been affecting Europe all along since, about a month ago or so. But now it is taken over even in the US, and US is breaking all records in the last, week or 2 weeks of December in terms of the number of cases, and it's spreading like crazy. And soon we US might hit even over 1 million cases a day. So though they are claiming that this variant is milder than the other variant, in any case, the vaccines haven't mattered, nothing has mattered, and there's no control. It's completely out of control. So though the variant may be milder, saying that it's 1/4 less likely to cause hospitalization, but then the cases are also going to be probably 4 times, or who knows, even 8 times more than the cases we had under Delta. So which means that the amount of hospitalization and possibly deaths is likely to be same or even higher than what we have seen in until now in the pandemic. So that at least is my estimate. And so we are getting into a really grim year here, both in terms of the pandemic, and who knows what kind of new variants may come out. The WHO has already warned that more dangerous variants are possible, which can bypass vaccine protection, all the medicines we have, and all those type of things. And this kind of has happened last time. The Delta variant is something that originally started in India, and the way it started was initially there was a UK variant which was not as lethal, in fact. And when the UK variant made its way to India is when it mutated, is where it mutated with a large size population over there. And that's kind of how you got the Delta variant later, and that spread all around the world, and it created more havoc, more destruction, more deaths than the original variant that came from China. I guess it's called Alpha, or I don't know, whatever it was. Right? So we have to wait and see. Even if this initial Omicron wave that might end in a month or so, who knows, in a couple of months maybe in the US, even if it is not as lethal, the Omicron variant is currently spreading in India as well. So who knows whether it's India or you somewhere in Europe or wherever in the world. What if new variants emerge out of further mutations of the Omicron, which make it even more lethal, and also which make it also be not stoppable by vaccine, right? So I don't know. I hope not. I hope no such worst case scenarios occur, because already we are in the worst case scenario right now in the US as we speak, with the kind of crazy number of cases, and there is simply no control. And earlier it was more like, when this pandemic occurred, the waves came, only few amount of states at a time kind of were getting impacted. It wasn't like it spread in all 50 states all at once type of a deal. But it looks like we are heading to something of that nature, where a much larger number of states kind of come into play, and with cases rising, hospitalization, deaths, everything rising together in in 10, 20, 30, I don't know, 40, 50 type of number of states than it has been before. So overall, this is looking like a very nightmarish start for the year 2022, and I hope this passes away and we don't get into much worse scenarios in the future. But given that Democrats are running the show in the US, liberals in Europe, and nearly economically liberal, India as well. So my hopes of things getting better are not that high, though I keep praying that that's what happens. Right? So, but it's as of now, it's an unmitigated disaster the way COVID is spreading all over the place. Right? So let's see what happens in the future. So coming back to foreign policy, so where do we start? The list of disasters is like endless, right? So starting, of course, the main disaster was Afghanistan. So the hasty withdrawal with no thinking, no planning, no nothing, just get out type of policy that Biden followed. And he tried to blame it on Trump, that Trump had already made this deal. But how many deals has Biden reversed? How many policies of Trump has he reversed? And starting from the day one itself, right? Whether it is immigration, whether it is climate, whether it is dealing with Europe, you name it, whether it is, how to deal with China, every single policy of Trump, Biden has been reversing. So there is no reason why, if he really wanted, he could not reverse the policy of Afghanistan withdrawal. He had been given good advice from multiple people, which he all disregarded, and hastily pulled out of Afghanistan. See, if Trump wanted to pull out, which he did, nobody wants endless war, then he could just, have pulled out within the first few months of his administration itself, just like Biden did. But Trump had the sense that this type of a hasty withdrawal is only going to make matters worse, not better. Unlike Biden, who was like, he didn't want to think. So despite the experience of what happened with Bill Clinton when he withdrew from Afghanistan, leading to the creation of Al Qaeda, neither was he looking at the outcome of Obama withdrawing from Iraq and getting us ISIS. He went ahead and repeated the mistake, all of the blunder all over again. And where are we today? Taliban is back in power. Terrorists are running amok. And these people are expecting that, they're going to have an inclusive government. And this is going to be a changed Taliban. And they're going to let women go to school or whatever, do all this kind of stuff. I don't know what these guys were smoking, So the thugs are back. And now we are in a situation where Pakistan, which is already completely unstable, is a democracy just in name only, is like a failed state already on the verge of bankruptcy. So these thugs at any time now are going to enter into Pakistan, take advantage of the situation there. And who knows, in a few years, is Pakistan going to fall and a terrorist going to take over not just Pakistan, its army, its nuclear weapons? Is that the scenario the world could be facing? It definitely appears that that is the direction in which the world is heading right now, right? And this is all a result of, again, Biden's hasty withdrawal. See, in Syria, when Obama did the same thing and withdrew hastily in his term, so at least when ISIS started forming in Iraq, the neighboring country was Syria, where they also went into the ISIS guys. But at least there was Assad, who America did not like. But he was at least against ISIS and fighting with them tooth and nail, because he didn't want them to spread and create chaos and try to topple his own government inside Syria. But will that be the case in Pakistan? Probably not. It looks to me it's more like a case where the Pakistani army, which is already filled with equally bad Islamic fundamentalist thugs, they're probably likely going to join with the Afghanistani terrorists rather than fight them in any way, and probably join hands and then take over and try to share power in from Islamabad. That seems like a more likely scenario than anything that took place in Syria, where Assad and his forces were fighting these guys. Not just that, America re-entered into Syria like under Trump, and they cleared out this whole mess. Though Obama was scared to fight, and he couldn't do much against ISIS, Trump took it up, and he ensured that ISIS is cleared out, all the territory is taken back, as well as the Baghdadi guy is killed. I don't think that a Democrat will have a similar type of policy, will have the guts to re-enter Afghanistan or Pakistan in case that terrorists are starting to run amok. They are going to wait until these guys come and attack the United States. Even then, it's not clear that they are going to take action and put ground troops, because they are so scared of such scenarios. So who will then have to take the ownership and act if Pakistan and its nukes and its army is in a state where it's about to be falling into the hands of terrorists? So this is the unfortunate kind of future that I see coming in the next few years, given what Biden has done. Right, so apart from that, that is still a brewing situation, and then return to all kinds of terrorist attacks and bomb blasts and whatever type of terrorist incidents across the globe, in Europe, whether it is in Europe or in America and anywhere else. Those all are also likely to return in the short course. We had almost forgotten about these under Trump, but they're all going to be back with a vengeance pretty soon over here. So that's the one disaster. And then look at how Biden is dealing with China versus how Trump used to. Trump had took them over only economically. He was really tough on China, but he took on mainly economically. He was not trying to provoke a war. He was not trying to make world into groups. Right, whereas Biden has gone totally easy on China in terms of economy, in terms of trade. So he might have left some of the trade sanctions that Trump imposed still in place, but that's nothing. He's not tough on trade. He's not tough on China on most things. But what he is become tough on is he's created all these military alliances, and he has created Democratic Alliance, whatever, a group wherein he is now split the world into democracies versus dictatorship. So there was a recent summit of democracies in which kind of Pakistan was invited, but because China told them not to go, so they eventually ended up not going, kind of signaling that they're more towards China. So the world is now kind of split into two groups, heading straight to a world war like scenario, something somewhere down the line in a few years possibly. And add to that, so Biden and probably even the UK guys got along with them. They engineered this AUKUS deal with Australia, wherein Australia withdrew from getting its nuclear submarines from France, or whatever type of submarines from France. And now United States and UK are going to defend Australia, and they're going to supply them nuclear submarines. And it's kind of a military alliance as well, which the Quad was not. Right, in the Quad. So originally Australia was part of the Quad too, but Quad wasn't a military alliance because India is not ready to get into such kind of a military alliance and project that they are directly in the US camp. So India is trying to play both sides a little bit. They don't want to lose their relationship with their old friend Russia, and also existing relationship with China, and go all out and join with America. So India is hesitant in the Quad, whereas Japan and Australia are totally ready to start form military alliances, and so they have done that kind of independently outside of the Quad. Right, so this is another provocation in my mind in terms of saying that, okay, we are ready for war. And then the whole Taiwan situation. So there is a whole thread from the US that if China invades Taiwan or something, these people are going to start war over it. Not sure what what exactly they're going to do, but that's at least what they're talking about. So none of the trade negotiations, none of the sanctions on trade, none of these are ongoing any longer. We don't hear any of that in the news. The only thing in the news is about all these, the summit of the democracies, AUKUS deal, then trying to boycott the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Right, so these are the kind of policies that Biden is adopting, which is completely opposite of the type of policies that Trump was adopting, which kind of were tough on China, but at the same time were not looking to provoke a war. Right, on top of it, Trump was pretty close to Putin. Now Biden has really gone, totally anti-Putin, and he has threatened him over Ukraine, where, so obviously Putin is having some issues with whatever is going on in Ukraine. And this is another thing with the Democrats. So nobody, when Trump was around, all the leaders of the world were afraid. They were scared to do any, wag their tail or do any kind of shit. and they knew that the consequences would be very tough on them. Whereas today under Democrats, no one has any fear. All are feeling and doing however they feel like. Like Russia is is already all set to possibly invade Ukraine, or do some border action at least. China India conflict is unresolved. It has only gotten even more escalated with thousands and tens of thousands of troops eyeball to eyeball for months on end on the India China border, right, which is not like it's not an international border. It's just called the line of actual control, where each side kind of claims that they own, or where their control ends. Right, so this is a very precarious situation which can lead to a 1963 like border conflict, if not a full scale war, with huge implications on both sides, and also with huge implications on what the future could hold after that. And just to remind you of history, 1963 is the first time in, like, I don't know, thousands of years that there was a conflict between India and China, military conflict, and this occurred under another Democratic president, John F. Kennedy, right? So was another supposedly hero of the Democrats. So that's when under him not only was there a Cuban Missile Crisis, where U.S. Russia were about to go to nuclear war. There was also India and China actually went to a border war. So we are now looking at a similar kind of scenario under Biden, with though instead of the conflict being in Cuba, this time it is likely on the border of Ukraine versus Russia. So more closer to Russia than closer to America, and the India-China situation continuing to to be like 1963, and there is with a very high likely chance of an actual skirmish taking place at any time. And on to add to that is the Iran situation. Right, so Iran is pretty close, very close to making its nuclear weapons, thanks to the Democrats again. So Trump had really taken Iran to task, cancelled the giveaway deal that Obama had done with them, which not only gave them money and made it not only gave them money but also made it easier for them to acquire nuclear weapons. So now all that toughness is gone. Is the same back to same old policy of the Democrats, where nobody is scared of them, or they don't have the guts to do anything really. Maybe, I don't know, Israel may have the guts, and who knows what Israel can do in case they fear that Iran may start getting close to nuclear bomb. They already tried to kill some nuclear scientists in Iran. That's at least what was in the news. Right, so maybe if they go to something further beyond just that, what are the consequences? And again, I feel just like Pakistan acquired its nuclear weapons under a Democrat, Bill Clinton, the likelihood is very high now that under another Democrat, whether it's Biden or the next one after him, maybe Kamala, Iran might also become a nuclear armed nation. Pretty soon, though they may not come out and disclose it very publicly because they fear retaliation and stuff. But the day where Iran gets nuclear weapons is also very, very near, in the near future. Despite whatever Democrats try to do and all their deals, which are all going to amount to nothing, and it's not going to stop anybody, like we have seen before. So Iran, another kind of a rogue state, a dictatorship, is also likely to acquire a nuclear weapon anytime soon, given that Democrats are unable and don't have the ability to enforce and be tough like how Trump was. The only, maybe you can say that a little bit of a positive news is that North Korea is not as threatening. We don't hear them that much in the news. They're dealing with their own scenarios, economic trouble, COVID trouble, and all kinds of trouble, and maybe even Kim Jong-un's health itself. So they're not making the news in terms of any confrontation or any back and forths with Biden. And I guess part of that has to do with all the good work that Trump did in negotiating with North Korea as well. So, so they are clear kind of what America needs and what they are looking for. And, at least for the time being, it's been diffused to a little bit of an extent. And so Kim Jong-un is really thinking and is in trouble, in fact, in terms of how things are panning out in his own country. So we'll see where that leads to. So overall, the world is in a worse place than it was before, and again there is the NATO is back, and United States is funding. They're no longer, asking European countries to pay the money like how Trump was going to bill them, and they're all back in business, the usual NATO guys, and threatening Russia. So the relationship that Trump had built with Russia smartly is all dismantled now, and there is Biden and along with all his European friends is in once again in a confrontational scenario situation with Russia over all kinds of silly things, including the Russia election meddling, which now has been proven as a hoax, as a fake planted story. So more will come out on that. And remember, Democrats were going on and on for years on this topic, and now it's turning out that this was just fake stuff, right? But that's not stopping them in any way to paint Russia as evil and as a somebody that they ought to have a adversarial relationship with, which makes no sense, which Trump understood. And this is driving Russia into the hands of China, which makes a nightmarish scenario in case there is a World War III, which is very likely, with Democrats leading the world, right? So in that type of a scenario, and if it goes nuclear, imagine the amount of nuclear weapons on both sides, on United States on one side, along with probably India, and then China, Russia on the other side, and even Pakistan. So what kind of nuclear war are we thinking, or what can we imagine that might become likely, right? So understanding this is why Trump had tried to get Russia on his side, not just Russia. He even had tried, so Saudi Arabia was also kind of a ally of the United States, and Trump had them buying weapons from the US, and he had made them not go into the into the Chinese camp. But all that is also another thing that under Biden is is completely messed up now. So Saudi is slowly, though they are changing their economy, they're giving women more rights and all that, but at the same time Saudi is slowly going towards the Chinese camp, because they just announced that or at least the news came out that Saudi is probably building some kind of missiles working with China, which is definitely a something that they were totally reliant on the United States for until recently, until at least Trump was around, and they were not willing to go over to the other side. So now that Democrats came in and they're trying to put pressure on Saudi Arabia over Khashoggi killing and what kind of stuff, meaningless, not necessarily means like trivial, nonsensical, items that they want to pick a fight over and alienate the relationship with Saudi Arabia. Though Saudi Arabia was Trump convinced them to not only buy weapons and be in the US camp, they even convinced them to mend their relationship with Israel. So they're still doing that, but at the same time they're also making friends with China and doing kind of various, not just business but even military type deals with them. So it remains to be seen how quickly or how slowly these two countries, which are also key, Saudi Arabia and Russia, which incidentally are not democracies also, are going to will they stay on the US side, which is unlikely, and how soon are they going to go and really become on the Chinese side. So that remains to be seen, and obviously Democrats are doing everything they can to hasten this move and get them over to the other side. So given the way the world is heading right now, it looks like one wrong move and there could be World War III. At least the early preparations, the early planning, the early military exercises, the military alignments, the thoughts and the preparations are underway across the board in multiple countries in terms of a very possible, very likely nuclear apocalyptic World War III happening in this decade, and the Democrats coming in and making all their foreign policy moves has only speeded this up and made this eventuality even more likely. Unlike when it was under Trump, when there was peace and prosperity around the world, yes, there was friction and tension, and Trump was tough on many people, including China, but it was not, and Iran and Pakistan for that matter, and terrorists in Syria or in Al Qaeda and in Afghanistan. But it was not like a scenario where we were heading towards World War. Whereas right now, I think the world has been turned around and we seem to be heading straight down this path with both sides, doing, making their moves and getting ready for this type of an eventuality, building their alliances, building their bases. And unfortunate scenario in this is India, the largest democracy, is right in the middle of this scenario with a likelihood of a three-side nuclear neighbor, whether it is China, Pakistan, and Iran eventually, which will also become a nuclear neighbor, like we discussed, a nuclear power. So the allies that United States has in Asia, which are or in Asia Pacific, like countries like Israel or Japan or South Korea or Australia, these countries are way too small to take on the might of China or for Israel to take on the billion strong population of the Islamic and the Middle Eastern countries. So America has been looking for a partner, for a country that they can use in order to really be a counter to China. So their own losses are less, and they can have somebody else fight for them, and they can use fire from their shoulder. And until now, India had been highly reluctant to join into any such partnership or alliance with the United States. And honestly, they were more towards until the Soviet Union was around, leaning towards Soviet Union, and Soviet Union was a closer friend to India. But in the last 20 odd years, the shift towards United States has definitely increased, and now with the present government in India, it is almost become a total sitting in the lap of the US kind of a scenario, more or less at this point, where India is like, though initially there were all kinds of fears that how would Biden treat Modi, the Prime Minister of India, given the, talk of human rights situations in Kashmir and whatnot, and Modi being a right-wing Hindu, person who is not for, not who is more against Muslims and not necessarily giving them all the rights and such talk. So though I have described in earlier videos the history of Democrats and how in every war like Vietnam War or Korean War, or even for that matter the Afghanistan War, when Jimmy Carter initially mended his relationship with Zia-ul Haq, a military dictator of Pakistan. So how Democrats have always worked with this type of dictators only, rather than any and human rights violations. They have overlooked all these type of situations just to obtain their aim of starting war, or or taking advantage of a situation and trying to force America's way in that, whether it was in Vietnam, making communism and during the Cold War, painting communism as the enemy and as something that's going to take over the world, and how these people are going to defend democracy, and and they were for human rights and whatnot, while they supported dictators in Vietnam. Similar scenario, okay, in in Korean War as well. But I think the worst of them all was the Afghanistan War, where they have supported, not just supported, created this kind of thugs and the terrorist organizations and the kind of people that we see, inhumane Taliban. In a way, you can say is the creation of United States itself. And of course, it's not only Democrats, even Ronald Reagan continued the policy started by Jimmy Carter, eventually resulting in these type of, I don't even call them humans, animals really, who are bloodthirsty and who know only war and rape, pillage, kind of with medieval mindset. So all these type of folks have been encouraged and fostered by the United States with policies in the past only to achieve their means and ends. So it should not be a surprise, though I don't know why it was in the media, that Biden is now close to Modi, or Modi is totally close to both Biden and Israel, and they are almost in like a complete alliance is totally sealed. It's about to be sealed, nearly 100% there, which will be the real country that United States is going to look forward to in terms of counter to China and the Middle East and the Muslim countries which are anti-America, like whether it is Iran, whether it is Pakistan, whether it is Turkey right now, or anybody else, or even the rest of the Middle East, right? Because the rest of the allies that United States has, in whether it is in Asia, are too weak, and the ones in Europe are no longer have the strength that they used to probably 100 years ago, like Britain, France. So the emerging power that America is looking forward to counter China, and if the need arises and a war really starts off, then to use to fight with China and the Middle Eastern forces is India. So in the eventuality of a World War III, India is going to see itself in a very unpleasant situation, with a likely three-side nuclear war, with three neighbors: China on one side, Pakistan on the other, and Iran on the other side. Though India and Iran are close friends, but given the close relationship between India, US, and India-Israel, it may be forced to also have a conflict with Iran, and and which could also turn nuclear. So I hope that none of these eventualities do occur. But unfortunately, this is where the policies of Democrats and the way the world seems to be headed right now in terms of foreign policy, that I can see and that I fear is the path that the world is taking in the coming years. Right, so that is as far as the foreign policy roundup is concerned. So now I just wanted to touch upon where the other topic, which is socialism everywhere. Right, so what we are seeing, let's talk about India, for example. So recently the Modi government announced that they were going to withdraw the farm laws that they had proposed over a year ago, and which had led to massive protests, probably the largest protests even India or the world has seen in decades, because India has a large population. So thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people on the street, and they were protesting for for over a year in all kinds of weather, whether it's hot or cold or everything, against these farm laws, which were really introduction of capitalistic reforms into farming in India. Right. So, and obviously, yeah, people in India or in any socialistic country, including the United States, are used to their freebies, and it's very hard to, once the freebies are given and people get used to receiving them, it's very hard to cut those later. And any talk of cutting the freebies obviously going to result in massive protests, and when elections come around in the and also in the loss for the candidate who has spoken about or even mentioned cutting any of the freebies. So similar was a scenario in India. So, and eventually owing to the pressure that was created by the farmers and by all kinds of factions and sections of the population and the various opposition parties and everyone, Modi, the Prime Minister, also saw that his vote base and his election victory may also get impacted if he really pushes forward with this. So finally, he made the choice so that he's going to withdraw these laws. And this is just an example of what Modi has been doing in India. So initially, he was thought of as this great reformer who is not afraid to push any capitalistic reforms and take India forward in the to the next level beyond where Narsim Rao and Vajpayee had brought in all these reforms and changes, and he was going to take it to the next level, is what people thought when Modi became the Prime Minister and campaigned about growth and development initially in the 2014 elections. But over the last 7 or 8 years, it is becoming more and more clear, even to people who were very scared, like like for example, a senior journalist like Shekhar Gupta, who initially, who all thought, all these liberals thought that, oh, this guy is going to be a total capitalist and he's going to push reforms like crazy. Oh, what's going to happen to all our socialist agendas that we have been doing for decades here in India? So they were all afraid, not just about the Hindutva aspect, but also about the capitalism that Modi was going to introduce. But now they themselves are starting to realize that Modi is no capitalist. He is equally a socialist, equally as any of the other parties in India are concerned. So in many cases, he is even more socialist than even an Indira Gandhi or a Mamata Banerjee or a Jagan Reddy or any of these socialist politicians that we have all over India today. Right, so the kind of socialism that is under Modi, free, whether it is free grocery or free electricity, free home, free gas, you name it, everything is free, right? And these are, and free money transfer into bank accounts. So these are to a level that has not even been seen under Indira Gandhi. Right, so the facade of Modi being a reformer and Modi being a capitalist and helping businesses, I think, is slowly waning. And it's not that Modi has not done any capitalistic changes or reforms. He has done some, but those are really are clear that doesn't seem to be his priority. His priority is more of election winning and being in total control. And for that, if he needs to do socialism, he is more than willing to not only do socialism, he is more than willing to compromise on reforms, like for example the farm laws, or delay things that are unpopular but necessary, like privatizing the railways, or even selling off Air India, which took like 7 years, when it was clear from day one Tata is probably the only buyer. All he needed to do maybe was a 30-minute meeting with Tata, and this could have been resolved, just like how the Rafale planes purchase was resolved with France. Right, years ago, and Air India could have been sold like maybe 5 or 7 years ago, within a few months after him taking the over as Prime Minister. But it is clear from his actions, getting more and more clear to people, that he is also if you want to call it a right-wing socialist, if there is a term of that nature. So he might be more right wing than the other parties when it comes to Hindutva and maybe even nationalism. But when it comes to economic policies, it is pure socialism. So everywhere, not this was just an example of India. So Europe is already in run by liberals. Angela Merkel was the chancellor of Germany for 16 years, pure socialist, pure liberal. Right, whether the only place France, no, the less we talk about the rest of Europe, the better. Whether it is France, Netherlands, or Norway, Sweden, you name it, they're all ultra liberal, ultra socialist. United States now, Biden himself, though he was more of a centrist before, he has signed on to a whole bunch of progressive and agenda of the left wing of the party, like Bernie Sanders and AOC and whoever. And not just that, his own vice president Kamala Harris is a typical California socialist, right? So no matter where we look, there is socialism prevails. Probably the only one little bit of a hope that I can see is UK, which has a conservative government and which has Boris Johnson as the prime minister. I wouldn't say that he is like a Margaret Thatcher type conservative, but at least he's conservative in name, and they have successfully executed the Brexit. So there are some rays of hope, something positive or something of bit of capitalism possibly that we can see that is coming out of UK. But the rest of the world, be it India, be it Europe or United States now under Democrats, is going straight towards socialism. Of course, the ray of hope of not having that much socialism is more in China, probably in Russia too, right? So the dictatorships and UAE, Dubai. So dictatorships are the one that are going towards capitalism, while a majority of the democracies are going blindly down the path of socialism. Right, so no matter where you see, there is mostly socialism, except a few handful of very small pockets in the world, right? And I guess the democracy eventually is going to only lead to socialism, because the way the candidate get elected is promising the most freebies, right? So if I'm a magician and I can give you freebies, then I get the votes. And that's in India, that is really what democracy has come down to today. So there is not a single party or I can't see anybody in sight. Maybe you can say Chandrababu Naidu with his party is probably more capitalistic. So if and then he is nowhere in the picture, and I don't see him winning anything for years to come. He had not won anything for years as well, and the only time he won is because he kind of got along with the Modi wave and became the chief minister of Andhra Pradesh for one term. And once he left left the alliance with Modi, he was defeated badly. And no matter which party, from the tip of from Kashmir and top to Kanyakumari in the bottom, I cannot see a single party that is of any worth which talks of capitalism, which has of any ideas of propagating capitalism or bringing in the kind of reforms. BJP was supposed to be that party, but they're also now turning out to be pure socialists, with maybe here and there small bits of capitalism possibly, but nothing beyond that. Right, so it's only a question of whose freebie is bigger than the other guy. In terms of who gives me the most promises, the most freebies. One the kind of will be the ones who get the vote. Of course, there are many other issues like caste, whatever, religion, politics, and whatnot. Of course, they all play into the election as well. But it's down to basically all parties are just socialists in nature, with no capitalistic and development oriented parties in sight anywhere in India today, which is an unfortunate scenario. So I do not know how India is going to get out of this situation. They were lucky in having two prime ministers who were all unexpected. One is Narsim Rao and another one was Vajpayee. Vajpayee maybe not that unexpected. He had been in politics for decades but hadn't won. Finally, he got an opportunity. Who kind of transformed India, brought it to the kind of the new India that we see today, which has the a over 8% GDP growth, capitalism introduced in various aspects. But beyond these two prime ministers, under whether it was Manmohan Singh or now Narendra Modi, we are only seeing a more and more turn to back towards socialism, back towards the days of Indira and Nehru. And with Modi, I think that turn towards socialism is getting even more pronounced. Not that it wasn't there under Manmohan. I think he started that turn, and now we are taking it to a next level under Modi as we speak. So when Trump was elected and Modi was still new into his term, there was huge optimism around the world that we had leaders who were conservative, who were willing to do economic reforms, who were willing to work for capitalism, and so there was hope and around the globe. But now all that hope seems to be quashed, and we seem to be going straight to socialism everywhere, which will eventually likely lead most of these countries to scenarios like how we have seen in Venezuela, right, with hyperinflation, currency losing value, like we saw in Turkey recently or in Pakistan, and so similar type of scenarios. It may take a decade or longer for these countries to reach that there with their socialism, but the end result, no matter which country it is which will follow socialism, is likely to be that of a Venezuela or a Zimbabwe type situation, which Pakistan and probably Turkey and places like this are already ahead in the race, with places like India, US and Europe following right behind. US, Europe have a advantage of a century of capitalism that they practice, so they have resources and money that they have, which they have been depleting all along. Not that they have a lot of it anymore now, but it kind of gives them a longer leeway before they get into situations like Venezuela, whereas places like India and other such countries which are still developing haven't had that many years or decades of capitalism, unlike Europe, US, will be in really bad shape, unfortunately, if they continue down this path, which seems to be where we are heading, given that there is really no opposition to Modi in India right now. So I don't see how what is going to change. And even if the opposition parties come in, it's not like they are any reformers. They're equally socialist as Modi. So no matter who gets in, and in the democracy, in the current group of parties that are out there in India, which most likely is only going to be Modi continuing. But even if someone else gets in, the policy of socialism is not changing. So I do not foresee, unfortunately, a great future for India in the current mix with the current democracy and the current parties that are out there. So but I still hope again that I continue to be wrong, and somehow a miracle can take place and things might change. But otherwise, given the way we are headed, so there is going to be socialism everywhere, and we have to be ready to face the consequences, whether it is inflation, unemployment, a lack of food, increase in poverty, increase in misery, so all these will be the obvious consequences. So we need to start getting ready to face these and endure them, while we hope for some changes, positive changes to occur and things to get better, and not go to what I call possible scenarios in India, which is Mahamandi, Great Recession or Depression, Greatest Depression, Mahadanga, various religious based riots, with the kind of policies being followed right now, and finally Mahaparamanu Vishwa Yuddha, which is nuclear apocalyptic World War III. These seem to be the three eventualities or outcomes that Democrats, liberals in Europe, and Modi RSS in India seem to be driving the world towards. And of course, on the other side, we have Russia, China, and those kind of dictatorships, whether Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, also adding fuel into the fire. It's not like they are, they're all doing everything great or anything. They are equally bad, but on the other side, we have these players with their policies moving the world towards these type of outcomes, unfortunately, is what I see. And I still hope and pray that I'm wrong, and I am completely off base, and we are going to head to better days. But unfortunately, this decade, this is what seems to be what I see as where United States, India, and the world seems to be heading towards. Until the next video, hope all of you have a great new year, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.